Content warnings for this episode include conversion therapy, transphobia, homophobia, neurophobia, dysphoria, mental health, ableism, religion, bullying, being misgendered, and current political events in Texas, USA.
Welcome to GenderMeowster Podcast Network. Genderful is a talk show featuring non-binary and trans folks discussing various topics and special interests. We kindly remind our listeners that no person is a monolith of identities. All opinions are the speaker's own. This show airs live on Twitch at twitch.tv/GenderMeowster, and VODs with show notes can also be found on YouTube.
So hi everyone, I'm GenderMeowster. I use they, them pronouns, and I will let my awesome, wonderful guest introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, my name is Lyric. You may know me as the Neurodivergent Rebel. I use they, them pronouns, and I am an autistic, non-binary trans person living in Texas. Yeah, I know. Now, trying to escape. But yeah,
I'm so thrilled that you're here. This is your second episode with us.
I know.
We had
thanks for
so
inviting
much
me
fun
back.
last time. I was just like, let's talk about more things. Did we talk about ADHD last time? I think we might have.
Maybe. I can't remember. It depends on how long ago it's been, too, probably.
Well, today, as you mentioned, perhaps our topics are autism and being trans in Texas. And so I think last time you were here, we talked about some of your youth things and realizing how you were neurodivergent and gender wonderful at a younger age. So maybe I'll just ask more specifically, what was it like growing up in Texas as an LGBTQ being?
Yeah, well, it's people are watching Texas right now and seeing the events in Texas in shock and think, oh my gosh, Texas is becoming so horrible. And it's like, no, Texas has always been this horrible. It's just now they've done something big enough that the eyes of the country is on Texas, like, for being horrible. But it's never been a particularly LGBTQIA plus friendly state. We are in the middle of the Bible Belt, USA. So it's very binary, very passive aggressive for anything that is, air quotes, not socially acceptable. As an autistic person, like, being socially acceptable and being palatable to other people is like pounded into me extra from a young age. And like that had implications on not just me masking my neurodivergence and not being discovered and diagnosed until I was almost 30 as a neurodivergent person, because I had learned so well to make myself what I needed to be for people to be nice to me, which is sad, that I was in that spot. But it's like I did the same thing with gender and my gender identity. I conformed to be what I thought was required for the assigned gender role, because it's the same reason. Like, as an autistic person, you mask and conform when you're in a hostile environment. It's not safe to be like, move in a certain way, talk in a certain way, ramble on about your special interest, info dump. You have to be kind of careful, because I've realized I'm a bit vulnerable, in certain situations, to people taking advantage of me if I can't read the situation properly and getting myself into trouble for not reading the situation properly. So it's like all of that, like, you learn to hide and not stand out because you don't want to be a target of anything that can, be dangerous. And in Texas, it's very similarly, if you're somebody who's a gender nonconforming person in any way, or you're trans, like, you don't want to advertise that in a state where you have, these this machismo thing being such a like this, what is it? This toxic masculinity, like, men have to be like real tough and like fight with each other. And I don't get it. It's never made sense to me. I think it's terrifying. Like, it's just terrifying, and then it's like that, it's a state where, even not just being a non-binary person, like, even being, I think Texas isn't even necessarily safe for women, either. It's not
Big
just
agree.
me as a non-binary
Yeah.
person, because it's like, when I was presenting, more femme presenting, and before I came out non-binary, I remember growing up and even being as young as like 12, 13 and looking like a little girl and having people catcall me and whistle me
Yeah.
as a child,
Yeah.
and like like
Everything's
if you're
bigger
gonna
in
go out,
Texas, even
yeah,
the
the
patriarchy
bigotry and
and
the
bigotry.
patriarchy. Yes,
Yeah.
it's horrible. So it's like, if you're gonna go out dancing or anything, you're gonna get groped. You're gonna get, like
It's,
you just you
yeah.
it's terrible. Like that shouldn't be the expectation, but that's just like was the norm growing up here.
Yeah. That's so
That you're like a
terrible.
prey animal, and
Yeah.
like, yeah, like people can be really, really predatory. And then people are just really big about telling you how they think you should act. Like people think they have a right to tell other people how they should act, how they should believe, uh, and all of that. And people want to like control other people in
Hmm.
ways that they have no right to control other people.
From the times I visited the South, I feel like it's even more that way in the South, the sort of social nicety policing thing. I feel like
Hmm.
it's next level than it is in
Yeah,
Pacific Northwest or some other places. Like
and very passive
it's a whole
aggressive.
thing. Totally passive aggressive.
Bless your heart.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, that's not a nice thing
It's not.
when
I
somebody
was
says that.
yeah, I was talking with a friend from Canada recently about how who's Canadian, who said that their impression of Canadian niceness that it is similar to that bless your heart sort of activity. There's this underlying thing that isn't being actively acknowledged, which for me as a neurodivergent person, it's like how do I say this phrase? It makes me feel gaslit and like I don't understand social norms because it's not direct. It's totally
Hmm.
smoke and mirrors and misdirection and oh goodness.
Yeah, yeah.
I
And it's
much
like
prefer
I'm not
just
picking up on
direct.
what's unsaid. I
Hmm.
don't pick up on what's unsaid. And so
Yeah.
that gets me in trouble a lot, here in
Yeah.
Texas. It's like I'm not picking up on the unsaid.
Right.
Or there, I if someone's being nice to me, or I think someone's being nice to me, before I realized I was autistic, it never would occur to me that, oh, they're just being nice for the sake of being nice, or maybe they're being nice because they have ulterior motives and they want something, not because they're
Hmm.
nice or they're a nice person. Like it never occurred to me until I misjudged people and it got me in really bad, dangerous situations where, people hurt me or took advantage of me. I
Hmm.
realized, oh, not everyone who seems nice is actually nice. And some people who seem nice are really, really horrible. And it's like, gosh, I wish I didn't have to learn those lessons through
Yeah.
experience, you
Yeah.
know?
Totally.
And now it's like I'm afraid to meet new people at all because I'm like, are they going to trick me? Are they really nice? Do they really like me? And it's like, who could possibly like me? Like why? Why would anybody like me?
Usually the
I have
answer
to be
is other
suspicious.
neurodivergent trans people.
That's true because I have been meeting more neurodivergent people now, and like since coming out neurodivergent and non-binary, and like the circle and the right people find me, just
Yeah.
naturally,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the haircut
which
is
is
also a
good.
dead giveaway. Did you
Is
just get
that
a
what it
haircut
is?
recently? Because I did
I have
on
to shave it
Friday.
like every week or
Yeah.
every 2 weeks.
It's so
But
good.
yes, I think it was yesterday
So good.
morning or something. It feels so fresh.
We
It's
both have
hot.
mohawks going on.
I have to keep it real short in the summer.
Yeah.
I can't handle it when it's hot. Like
Well,
it's just,
especially in
my hair is
Texas.
really thick. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
have like I have a lot of hair right now, even with most of my head shaved. Like I have a
Mm-hmm.
big, thick, black, wavy hair. And it's just this big triangle cone of giant hair. I had all of it, it's a lot of hair. It's too much.
Yeah.
A sensory
Um,
nightmare.
and totally. Yes, that's actually part of why I think I've kept my short hair not only because it looks more masculine and that's what I'm going for, but it is better
Hmm.
sensory wise because it's not touching the back of my neck wet hair. Oh,
Ah,
I hate it so
no.
much. I don't
Or
want it
like
touching my shoulders, getting my
I
shirt
think a
wet, and
bug
then my
is
shirt's
crawling on
wet.
my shoulder, like because a hair
Oh,
will wisp on your shoulder. I'm
yeah,
like, oh, a bug, a bug, a bug.
yeah,
It's not a bug, it's just a hair. Like I'm always freaking out,
I
or
know.
I'm clumsy. So like when my hair was really long, I would like slam it in car doors or sit on it or you know.
Yeah.
It was dangerous. Or it was just always back in a ponytail or a bun
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't want
Yeah.
to mess with it because it was too much
Yeah.
work or it was hot.
When I had longer
So,
hair, it was constantly pulled back. I basically was
hmm
like, I want short hair, but I don't have it,
yeah,
so I'm just gonna
yeah.
put it up. So it's
And put a
pretending to
ball
be
cap
short.
on or like pull it
Exactly.
back and
Yeah.
put a ball cap on or wear a hoodie. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, I'm
Totally.
I'm rocking the short hair, but I think I'm playing with it now, and I'm thinking that maybe once we start traveling, I won't have like a regular like visit with my mom who does like the middle,
Mm-hmm.
and she bleaches it for me a couple times a year, and then I do the color, and so I won't have someone to help me anymore because we're not going to be in Texas eventually,
Mm-hmm.
thank goodness. But still, I'm like, oh no, because I don't like it's a sensory nightmare having people touch my hair. Like if it's not my mom, I don't think I could handle it, or like my
Yeah.
partner or someone really close to me. I don't think I can handle a stranger like that close in my hair,
Mm-hmm.
and touching me like that. But so like I'm thinking I might like grow the middle out again and see how that goes with the rest of this shaved. And like, because my
Mm-hmm.
partner shaves the sides for me at home.
Yeah.
And so maybe and I'll just have this little bright piece at the end and then it'll be long and black in the middle. I don't know. Maybe it won't cause dysphoria. I'm a little nervous about
Well,
that,
and how
having
hard
it
is
long
it to find a
again.
hairstylist in Texas that actually gets it?
Well, it's my mom. So,
Right.
but, well, I don't know. And okay. So I will say, it could be because it's my mom, but I feel like in Texas, hair salons are probably one of the safe queer spaces
Mm-hmm.
in Texas because a lot like okay, I grew up in my mom. It was my mom's barber salon, so that is a thing to belong to my mom, and then other salons that didn't belong to my mom, but there were always like gay men and trans people
Mm-hmm.
working in the hair salons.
Mm-hmm.
That was where I got a lot of my exposure. A gay man taught me how to do my makeup, so I knew like makeup wasn't gendered when I was a young person, thank goodness,
Right.
because the best makeup artist I knew was a guy, and everyone,
Mm-hmm.
if makeup wasn't for guys, then why would he be one of the best makeup artists I've ever met?
Exactly.
Makeup's for everybody who makes you feel fabulous. It's for you.
Mm-hmm.
All the people in movie stars on wear makeup, the news anchors wear makeup, regardless of their gender. They just won't admit it.
Right. Yeah. They totally do.
hmm
So you've talked about pieces of it, but is there anything else you'd like to say about what it's like being a trans person in Texas right now with all the stuff that's going on?
Uh, so I feel very lucky that I am an adult and I am someone who could potentially get out of here
Mm-hmm.
right now because families, especially with young people and
Mm-hmm.
minors, and underage people, are in a much more serious position and predicament with the current persecution of families for getting the gender affirming care that those children do need, with it being criminalized. So I've literally seen stories of families that are leaving Texas,
Mm-hmm.
exodus, because they are afraid. They are having to leave, the state, maybe they're from, maybe their family, maybe their roots, everything they know, because it's no longer safe for their families to stay here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's very real. And it's it's something I didn't think I'd see ever in my lifetime. And it's something that I feel like it feels like we're in a sci-fi movie. It doesn't feel like this should really
Yeah.
even be happening. It's like, how did nobody step in and stop this?
Yeah.
Even though this is like literally like what is recommended care, like you're preventing access to recommended medical, life-saving medical care
Yeah.
for families. And so now they have to leave to be medical refugees.
Yeah. Medical refugee. That's quite a
Yeah.
phrase. I haven't heard it put that way, but it totally makes sense. And I know a handful of trans people that have moved to the Pacific Northwest because in the last 5 months, because the healthcare laws in up this direction are covering trans care like with the state health insurance,
That's
and
amazing.
people are like mass arriving in my region of the world because they're like, wow, I can get the care I need here. And so it's like it's kind of scary to see this happening like in this country and to be
hmm
like are we just all gonna like hide in little pockets on the coasts and lose the middle three quarters of the country to because like the kids growing up in the middle they still
Yeah.
need queer and trans adults. And so then there's this debate. I've heard trans people in Texas talk about the differences between, do I stay and fight or do I go and take care of myself? And I honestly don't think there's any one right answer to that. I think it's very personal, and it's like so stressful to have to make that
Yeah.
choice because there's sacrifice either way.
Yeah. And it's like, this is like, this is where I'm from. I've been here my whole life. My
Hmm.
family's here,
Yeah.
generations of family.
Hmm.
But, I don't see it getting any better. It's not just that, that it's a very anti-queer friendly state. It's also, uh, environmentally, like it breaks my soul to
Hmm.
watch the water tables and the river quality and all the natural resources being destroyed and depleted,
Yeah.
because I've watched it my entire life and I
Hmm.
remember what it was like when the
Yeah.
environment was in a better state.
Hmm.
And it kills my soul to even watch it. So it's like I just can't see anymore because I know it's going to keep going, and it's like I
Yeah.
need to like get away. But um we all pick what we can do. And I've got so many fights I'm already fighting right now that I
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
pick the fights that I have to pick which fights and how I can fight them, because maybe I can still fight this, but not from within the state boundaries of Texas. I'm from
Hmm.
Texas, so maybe I'll still have a different way I can fight it, but I don't have to stay and fight. Maybe I can leave and fight too. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think if I don't preserve myself somehow,
Hmm.
uh, I won't be able to fight anyway. The thing to tell you to put your own air mask on first.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you know, I've wanted to leave the entire country before because of how stressful, like, they've politicized my identities.
Yep.
It's not like a disagreement about how money is spent. It's like a disagreement about my body and my brain and my self-worth as a human being. And it's like, whoa, y'all.
Yeah. It's not. It's like, how is that anybody else's business?
Yeah.
Like how is it my business if anybody, regardless of their gender, wants to get like boobs?
Yeah.
Like, people have been having cosmetic surgery like for how long?
Mhm.
Like, how is like and nobody tells anybody else you can't get a boob job, or you can't,
Right.
like, nobody says that to someone else.
Yeah.
You can't
Yeah.
get your nose done.
Right.
Like, why do they think now they have the right to interfere with trans people
Mhm.
being able to see ourselves the way, our truest versions of ourselves, our best selves? Like,
Yeah.
why is it anybody else's business?
Mhm.
It boggles my mind, because if
Yeah.
you told them, oh no, you can't get whatever surgery you're going to get, they would be like, no, it's my body, my choice.
Right. Yeah, I mean, cisgender people have been accessing HRT for decades. That's
Oh,
part of why so
true.
many of these surgeries and medicines exist, is like people wanting to have their bodies function like they did when they were younger. They're avoiding menopause, they're
Hmm.
avoiding lower testosterone in later years of life. Like, and so,
Yep.
you know, cis
Yep.
people can have Viagra and like localized estrogen, but it's a whole time if trans people want it. So I don't know. It's,
It's a double
my
standard,
goodness. Yeah,
which
it
is
totally
ridiculous.
is.
Like, with being autistic and neurodivergent, it's like there are all these standards that would never be acceptable for
Hmm.
neurotypical children. It's like,
Yeah,
oh, it's okay, they're autistic. You can treat them unfairly. You can treat them unpoorly. And then being
right.
non-binary, being trans, it's the same thing. It's like, oh well, but they're trans, so we don't have to treat them equally. We can treat them like garbage, and we can deny like their realities because
Hmm.
it's just so not okay. Or like, because
Right.
if you're autistic and trans, they could say, oh well, you're autistic, so you can't possibly know enough about your own gender identity to know you're trans. So it's like you cannot win.
Right. So I think at some point today you mentioned that you realized that you were autistic and non-binary later in life, like maybe when you were 30 or in your 30s. What was that like? Did like a bunch of things in your life suddenly make sense? Like, how was that
Gosh, yeah.
process for you?
Oh my gosh. So, I got diagnosed autistic at 29 when I was going through autistic burnout.
Hmm.
And I was falling apart. I was losing skills. I needed to change something about the workplace and get accommodations.
Hmm.
And I wasn't doing well. And then when I found out I was autistic, I realized that I had been really hiding things about myself, my strengths, my weaknesses, my struggles, my pain, my discomfort. I had also been hiding like my joy, the things that made me happy, the things I loved. You know, I was not living an authentic life at all, and it prevented me from developing authentic relationships with other
Mm-hmm.
people. It prevented me from really knowing even what I really wanted in life because I was too busy living up to the expectations of others. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't really understand, like I was like in the same way as I was masking the autistic and neurodivergent traits in me, trying to be air quotes socially acceptable. I did the very same with my gender, what was assigned for that role, as I briefly mentioned earlier. And so also part of that is growing up in Texas in the hair salon. I did see other LGBTQIA people, other trans people, but they were trans binary people. I never knew non-binary was a
Mm-hmm.
thing until I started to be much older and get on the internet. And it was like learning from people that weren't in Texas, like the international connectivity of the World Wide Web, like
Mm-hmm.
reading about different non-binary gender identities, not just, non-binary as the umbrella, but reading like, and finding a gender fluid. I was like, oh, that makes sense. Because before I had the exact experience, someone describing my experience, it didn't quite make sense. I was like, well,
Right.
I never quite felt like a girl, but I don't know how to put into words what I'm feeling. So I'm just going to keep it to myself because nobody's going to understand if I can't explain it, So I just kept it in for
Mm-hmm.
like my whole life going, I know I'm not a girl. I knew I wasn't a girl when I was like whew, preschool, 4 or 5, maybe younger. I knew, and I knew, and puberty was so hard.
Mm-hmm.
Puberty was really hard.
Yeah.
And, there's always that nagging, like, you're going along and you're playing this role. And
Mm-hmm.
then, you're like, haha, trick you. It's like that song, I feel like a woman. All the women get excited and dance. I'm like, I don't at all. I don't like this song. And it makes me very uncomfortable. Red flag, red flag. I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm uncomfortable when I hear this song.
Well, and some of that music, right? Like I feel like a woman, or there's a choir piece I sang once that's I Am Woman, and it was in a women's
Oh
chorus.
no.
But I feel like some of that came about with an older wave of feminism that was just like declaring like feminine power and wresting that from the hands of the patriarchy. And so it's like, I don't know if
It's
you've ever run into
beautiful.
this, but I've run into spaces where older feminists, like feminists that are either Gen X or Boomer, are sometimes resistant or struggle with some of like trans ideologies, trans
Oh.
spirituality, all of those pieces because they worked so hard to have goddess instead of God. For example,
Mm-hmm.
that like when you're like God X or Priest X with an X in it instead of an S, where you're making it another step beyond, it's like it hurts their heart. It makes them sad because they fought so hard for Goddess, and to have that be erased is like creates feelings for them. Um,
Oh yeah, totally. And like even like okay, I'll give you another example of being an LGBTQIA person in Texas. One of my jobs many years ago, I was working for the state and environmental quality department as a contractor, and my manager was a lesbian, right?
mhm,
Feminist lesbian. And I admitted to like back then the closest word I could say was bisexual because I didn't understand pansexual. Like it's like you're limited
mhm,
vocabulary when you don't have the internet. You're not in a very LGBTQIA friendly place. And so it's like I admitted that I was bisexual, and she's like, "That's not a thing. You're just a horny delinquent pervert
mm,
who wants to get it on all the time." And it was
wow.
like, wow, from within, someone who I thought would understand. And it was like,
Hmm.
and then I realized, like, when I came out non-binary, that some of the people who have the most hatred towards trans and non-binary people were lesbians, which really broke my heart because I
Yeah.
thought, oh, this is a community. And it was like they're threatened. They're like, you're giving up, your power. You're giving up this. You're how dare you say this? This hurts women when you do this. And
Yeah.
it's like me speaking my truth does not hurt or take anything away from your truth just because it's different from your own. You
Right.
know, that hurts my heart. It's really hard when it like the people that you think would understand are like actually the meanest and the most
Yeah.
outspoken and
Yeah.
hateful.
I've had that surprise happened to me as well, because I used to be a butch lesbian before I started testosterone, and I don't think the lesbians would like me anymore. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not fully confident that the lesbians would welcome me to their spaces. And it's like, I guess another thing that I think I've mentioned this before in my like little check-ins before the talk show, but I don't know if I've ever said it on the show. But something that can happen to trans people on HRT is their sexuality changes. Like
Oh,
like before I was
yeah.
on HRT, I was lesbian, and now I've got, testosterone. I've been on it for whatever I said at the beginning of the show, year and 4 months or whatever. And I've noticed that I'm having more like gay man dreams, where like
Oh.
I'm a guy and I'm sleeping with a guy in my dreams. Um, and that's really interesting. And I'm like, wow, I'm way more pansexual now than I was a year and a half ago. Like,
Welcome.
woo, that's fun and different. And it's just like I don't hear people talk about that very much, like orientation changing after HRT, and like because it's still gay. It's just gay man instead of gay woman. It's like all the gay, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Once you're trans, everything is sort of some flavor of queer or gay. Like
Right.
it's
Yes.
like I'm not cis, so everything is gay. Um.
By
Anyway,
default.
yeah. So it's yeah. So there is. I've experienced that disappointment where I thought I had found comradeship in a certain pocket of the LGBTQ umbrella, and then feel like if I went to one of those spaces again, I would not be accepted. Um, okay, this is probably a trick question. Do you feel
Okay.
like it's better to be autistic in Texas or trans in Texas?
Probably autistic, but
Yeah.
I don't know. The behaviorism in the school is rampant. Like
Mm,
I wasn't even diagnosed, and like a lot of those behaviorist methods were used on me just by even teachers in the classroom, in the mainstream classroom even.
hmm.
So it's neither is great, but probably being autistic. Well, especially right now because the kids is really where the legislative focus is on, like really heartening those families and those young
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. I don't know why the legislators are so focused on targeting children right now. Probably to keep our attention so they can do other things because kids are compelling.
Mm.
But my goodness, it is a time. Um, so, for those who are hearing us talk and maybe don't have a 400 level understanding of all the things we're talking about, can you describe what neurodivergent masking is? If someone is like, oh, what is masking?
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier that, before I found out I was autistic, I had learned to actually camouflage and hide a lot of those neurodivergent traits, those
Mm-hmm.
things, my weaknesses, even, what excited me and my passions and what made me happy. I was hiding things about myself that when I realized I was autistic and ADHD, I was like, oh, I'm literally just hiding my autism and ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about that people don't understand is with this camouflaging, this masking is something that we do in self-defense. It is a
Mm.
survival skill. So we're doing it because we want to be invisible. We want to blend in. We don't want to be bullied. We don't want to be picked on. A lot like being in the closet. It's very similar. Like as someone who's, been in the closet for little
Mm-hmm.
bits of time with different things, it is very similar. Like you're doing it because you don't think people will understand you. You don't necessarily feel safe. And so, you're hiding things about yourself that you think might make you stand out.
Yeah.
And so the thing though about that is with the autistic masking, it's a bit different than masking gender and other things. Is when you're masking how you engage with other people socially and how you process information, it's constant, it's nonstop. So
It
you're
is
like
constant.
constantly overthinking every social interaction,
Mm-hmm.
pre-planning scripts for social engagements and things like,
Mm-hmm.
and panicking when the conversation takes turns you hadn't
Expected.
anticipated it might
Yeah.
go. Yeah. A lot of um, just struggling to hide when you're confused being misunderstood and having people
Mm.
get mad at you and you having no idea why they're angry all of a
Right.
sudden, like, or where things went so wrong, or thinking you're getting on well with people, thinking people like you, and then realizing they actually hated you or they didn't like
Mm.
you. And it's like you had no idea. It's like I'm always the last one to find out. Like, oh, I thought they really liked me. No, they hated you. They went home and complained about you for 5 hours. I was like,
Mm.
oh, I thought that was my new best friend I just met.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
it's like it's so
So
painful.
confusing and painful.
Yeah. And so it's like all of those things
Hmm.
that would make anyone notice you're different. Like you learn to hide and put away because you don't want to be picked on. You don't want people to say, oh, you're weird. Why do you move that way? Why do you talk that way? You always talk about boring things. You talk too much. Why are you so quiet? Like you can
Yeah.
never win. And people are constantly telling you how you're not enough.
Yeah.
And
Or
it's
too
just
much.
a lot of work. Or how you're too much. Yeah. It's
Simultaneously,
like,
not enough and too much constantly. It's
oh
exhausting.
yes. How can anyone be expected to manage like that?
Hmm.
So it's exhausting.
Yeah. Yeah. As you've now experienced twice, I try very hard to get all my questions planned before the stream because I like my guests to know it's coming and not be totally surprised.
Mhm.
Sometimes people actually like type out their answers, and that's totally not what I'm seeking from them. I'm like, just so you know, this is what I'm going to ask you. But maybe it helps them to think about it, and that's also fine. But I relate to that wanting to plan how it's going to go before you do the thing.
Mhm.
Like I even this housewarming party that we just had, like a ton of my friends are socially anxious and on the neurodivergent spectrum and some flavor of gender wonderful. And so it was just a bunch of like half the party was like my trans, and that's with an asterisk, like all of the gender diverse flavors, like neurodivergent friends, and then the other half was like my wife's software engineering friends who are mostly also neurodivergent, but maybe fewer trans people, or they're in the closet because it's hard to be out in the tech industry, which I'm sure you also have
Mm.
experience with.
Oh,
Yeah,
I wasn't even out when I was in tech.
yeah,
And yeah. I don't know. For a long time before I got into was diagnosed autistic and started the autistic advocacy, I thought my gender, my sexuality are nobody's business. And it was just like I wasn't in the closet, I wasn't hiding, but I wasn't necessarily like, yay, this is me, look at me, for a
hmm,
long time. And then it was like once I started talking about being autistic and realizing like how that representation really helped me. And then I figured out, oh, non-binary. I'd never heard of this before because there's no representation. And it was like,
right,
okay, I get why we got to talk about it now.
yeah,
I get, 'cause I used to want to be invisible. So it's
hmm,
like putting myself out there this much was really unnatural. I totally almost did it behind like a pen name Neurodivergent Rebel and never showed my face.
right,
Like originally, before I realized the internet wants to see faces and photos and videos, it would have just been me writing because I much rather write
yeah,
than speak and
yeah,
then have people know who I am. And now I can't even put it back. It's like
hmm,
I've committed,
yeah.
you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, for my brain, my neurotype especially, I would rather watch a video or listen to a thing than just read a wall of text. Like, I don't know if it's the font. Like, there's this whole thing going around right now about bionic reading. I don't know if you've
Oh,
seen
I
that, but
saw it. Yeah.
I have feelings that it's behind a paywall. Like, I would like someone to create an accessibility tool that's free and not make me pay
Hmm.
$5. Um, but and then have like a tip jar. Like, I would feel better about that. Like, make it
Yeah.
available for those who need it and don't have the resources, but also give us the opportunity to give you money because we're excited about it. I don't know. I mean, that's what the show is, right? Like, it's you can listen
Yeah.
to all of the show for free, but also if you like what's going on, there's a Patreon or whatever. So
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know. It's interesting balancing accessibility and like everyone needs to eat.
Yeah. I know. I struggle with that too. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know, especially when I'm not motivated enough by like money.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
yeah.
I was like, I'm not the person to ask.
Yep.
I didn't know it was behind a paywall. I just saw a meme about it and I
Yeah.
like read it and I was like, oh, wow, that's
Yeah, you
great. Because
saw
I
the
already
plain
read really
text
fast.
versus yeah.
Yeah, and I
Hmm.
already read really fast. And then I was like, oh, this is spectacular because I better read more
That's right.
accurately.
Yeah, you're hyperliterate. That's right. I remember that. We
Hyperlexic,
talked
yeah.
about that last time. Hyperlexic. See, I got the word
Yes,
wrong, but that's okay.
it's okay.
Um, So we have a question from the chat. It's in the thing in red if you want to read along.
Yeah.
So have you noticed a huge overlap between genderqueer humans and neurospicy humans? At what point do we recognize that those discriminating against our trans youth are also displaying autistic and ADHD / neurodivergent discrimination?
I noticed pretty right away that
Mm-hmm.
there's a huge overlap between not just genderqueer humans and neurospicy humans. I love that. Neurospicy. But just LGBTQIA plus in general, just
Mm-hmm.
gender and sexual orientation differences. Like when I did a survey of my Twitter audience, of course, it might be a bit skewed because my audience is going to be very LGBTQIA positive. I
Mm-hmm.
asked, are you LGBTQIA plus? Yes or no? And it was like 74.6% of like 3,600 something autistic people said yes, they identify as
Wow.
LGBTQIA plus, and only 24% said no, they don't. And I was like, oh, that's like more than I expected. But I knew it was going to be a lot because when I first started getting into other autistic spaces, it was the first time in my life where it was like I wasn't the only LGBTQIA plus person in the room, and the straight person was the straight cis person was the minority in the group,
Mm-hmm.
which is ridiculous when you consider that the representation is like little white boys, little straight cis white boys, and that's not even the majority of autistic people
With
at
all the
all.
studies and all the things. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have bad data if that's
Yeah.
the blueprint, because
At the very least, we
that's
have
not
incomplete
reflective.
data.
Yeah.
It's such a small little percentage, like,
Hmm.
of the overall all of us.
Yeah.
Um, so
And so
what are the impacts
okay.
that masking can have on neurodivergent people? Like, obviously, it's exhausting.
It's exhausting.
Um, yeah,
But it can also be something that can keep us safe because the world really can be dangerous. So I want to make sure I mention that because,
yeah,
as much as I hate that we do it, even I will still do it. Like if I'm in a situation with maybe, say, a police encounter or, something
yeah,
like that, because I had a police encounter once when I did have a meltdown. And it was scary. It was a bit
yeah,
scary. And it could have gone much worse. Like
yeah.
it could have gone much worse had I been different than I am. So, masking can save our lives, but also masking for me led me to burning out. It led
Mm-hmm.
me to putting myself into situations that were not good for my mental or physical health because I
Right.
was doing what was expected of me instead of honoring my own neurodivergent brain, honoring my own
Mm-hmm.
boundaries, and honoring my own needs.
Yeah.
And it led me to pushing myself too far and not even understanding or knowing where my own boundaries were.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, here's the wall, and I'm just going to crash right on through it.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to stop until I physically become ill and get so sick I can't work anymore.
Right. Yeah. That was sort of my follow-up question in my mind is like, I wonder what the comorbidity is between like neurodivergent adults who mask and chronic illness. Like,
I
I wonder if
when
we're
we
literally making ourselves sick constantly with this behavior that's keeping us alive but ill.
I would bet my life on it.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that really confidently for a couple of reasons. One, we know they've already tied masking in studies to poor mental health impacts such as increased anxiety and depression.
Absolutely.
Suicide and epilepsy are two of the top killers in autistic people.
Hmm. Okay.
And we already know with trans youth that being in the closet and not being able to be your authentic self leads to suicide. Masking, very similar to being in the closet, not being able to be your authentic self. Autistic
Hmm.
people having a high suicide rate. I don't think that is a coincidence at all.
Yeah.
uh and then the other thing is, not knowing yourself, not being able to build authentic relationships because you're not putting an authentic face out to the world, so you're not attracting the right people who will love you for
Right.
you because you're not being you.
Right.
Nobody can know you, and you may not even know you.
Hmm.
So there are all these impacts that we don't even see, and then burnout because it's exhausting.
Yeah. So maybe even I wonder if masking could also delay coming out as gender diverse
It did
because
for me,
yeah,
because as soon as
yeah,
I
yeah.
stopped masking, it was like this big gender piece was staring me in the face. It was like I was getting rid of all the things I did for the sake of other people.
Yeah.
And it was like, ooh, all of the gender things. These feel very inauthentic to me. Ooh, what do I do with that though? I was like, oh shoot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh shoot, I have to address this thing. Crap. It's like I'm already going through one life crisis right now with the diagnosis of being autistic at 30.
Yeah.
Now I gotta deal with my gender.
Yeah.
Oh,
I, during the like COVID lockdown, stay at home stuff, I realized I was autistic. And then
oh
within
yeah.
six
Wow.
months, 6 to 12 months, I decided I wanted to start HRT. I'd already been out as non binary for like 4 years. But then 10 days after I got married, I was like, I think I need to start testosterone. And it also took like getting married to my wife and having that extra level and layer of like stability for my brain to even be willing to look at like I want to start
Oh,
testosterone. So there's also this
like
thing
what
with
you actually
security and
want.
safety that it's like I wasn't ready to see that part of myself until I had that other stability established in my life.
Oh, that makes a
Thankfully, my
lot of
wife is
sense.
also trans, so she's
Yay!
also a software engineer, so she sort of saw it coming because she always thinks about edge cases, and she already knew I was non-binary, so
Oh.
she sort of she'd run the numbers in her head and predicted that was a potential outcome, and had already made peace with it. But oh my gosh, it was agonizing in the beginning. I was so scared constantly.
Oh, I bet. Oh, I bet. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense too, because it's like you're putting down the things that, you like 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 when I mask, for example, like as an autistic person, when I mask, it is like because I feel unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
And so I
Yeah.
kind of closet back up, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and then, with, putting on like the performance of the gender I thought was expected, it was the same thing. Like it felt safe. It was
Mm-hmm.
like artificial safety, artificial security, right? And then it was like it got to be the point where I was feeling more and more dysphoria
Yeah.
about things. And then it was like, I can't stand to look at myself anymore. I feel
Right.
fake. I'm living a lie. And then
Mm-hmm.
it went from giving me this artificial safety to being this thing that felt like this sickening, nauseating way. I can't even explain. You've got to know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that. This is wrong. This is wrong. Get it
Dysphoria.
off. What have I
Yeah.
done? Ugh,
Just feeling totally
no.
disingenuous and dysphoric.
Just like, yes, it's just it's like I can't even, like, I don't think words do it justice. Like I don't think a cis person can understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they can, maybe I'm wrong, but I can't conceptualize it in words. It's just the yuckiest of feelings.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, I came up with a description of dysphoria the other day, and it was great, and I can't remember it at all. Maybe there's a clip of it somewhere. If I find it later, I'll send it to you.
Please do.
But it was good, whatever it was, whatever I came up with. But yeah,
I'd
that
love to
that
hear
sort
it.
of like feeling of just total disingenuousness and like the ick that goes with that. All right, my next question is: are there any unique barriers that neurodivergent LGBTQ people face? We've already talked about some of them, but is there anything else you can think of that's like very specific to this intersection of identities?
Yeah. Well, I mean, other than that big one where it's like people saying, oh, you can't possibly know your gender because you're neurodivergent, which is like really horrible and
Oh God, yeah,
damaging and hurtful. Because I think I know more about my gender because I'm autistic,
yeah,
honestly, like because I'm so obsessively introspective. And I've considered all of the outcomes really, really, really
yeah.
carefully. Like, it's like it's not that I've just casually done this thing. I like had to overthink it so hard.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, yes, I
Yeah.
know I've made this
Mm-hmm.
decision. I've pondered it for 30 some odd years before I was willing to talk about it with anybody. I've
Yeah.
thought this through.
Mm-hmm.
But like that's a really big one. But then it's also, when we want to enter LGBTQIA spaces, they may
Yeah.
not be neurodivergent friendly. So like we
Right.
want to go to
Yeah.
like Pride and events and things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I really want to go to Pride parade, but I've never been because it sounds like a sensory nightmare. And I feel like I
Mm-hmm.
might get overwhelmed by all the people and I don't actually know if I can handle it. Like, I love the idea of going to a pride parade, but like
Yeah.
actually going to one, like, sounds like something I may or may not be able to handle, and it might be risky to do
Mm-hmm.
because I might totally have an overload and like I don't know that it would be safe. I don't know that they're going to know about neurodivergence the way neurodivergent people tend to know more about LGBTQIA plus people.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's where the value is in having organizers of these types of events who are both. Like
Yeah.
the housewarming party we just had, I sent out, there was like the initial invite with information, and then I sent an email like 36 hours before the party with more information that included things like label your food, you're going to have name tags with pronouns,
Oh, I
like
love
don't
it.
forget to write the thing. And I added on there, like, we're going to have earplugs available for folks who are like sensory, they need that sensory accessibility tool. They'll be at the front door. They're constantly available. There's like a box of over 100 of them, so 4 times as many
Wow.
people as we had over enough earplugs. I honestly don't know if anyone took them, and I ran my little email by a friend who's also neurodivergent, and they said, it's great you have earplugs, but why do you have earplugs? And so then I was like, oh, I hadn't thought of that could be an anxiety
Ah,
inducing instead
yeah.
of like a good thing. And so I added like, there will be music in the house, but there will not be fireworks or other loud things. So then people knew why there were earplugs also. And so there's just this
Oh,
level of like
yeah.
information. And then I realized, we invited some of our next door neighbors because we're trying to make friends with the people that we live nearby. But they didn't get the emails because they know where we live. They don't need that information. And so
Oh,
we had these like mostly cis het neighbors wandering into our like very neurodivergent queer housewarming party. So I printed this thing off and put it by the front door so people could read it and have something to sort of orient them to the space. And this one like straight white neighbor guy walked in and didn't have a name tag on, even though everyone else was wearing name tags. So I just very gently said like, hey, the name tags are by the door, you can write your name and pronouns on there. And for a while I thought he didn't do it, but I realized at some point that he actually did go and put on his name tag with his he him
oh,
pronouns
wow.
on there. So I was like,
Oh,
all right.
wow. Oh, he did. Nice.
Yeah, so it was really interesting to navigate that, and like, all of that. I even included on there like there's 3 porches, and there's also a lake like a block away. You can just
Oh,
walk over
wow.
by the mailboxes, and like if you just need a break, here you go. And part of why I wanted to include that information
Nice.
in the email is so people would know if they could only show up for 30 minutes and then they were overwhelmed and had to go, or whatever the reason,
Yeah.
like here's all the accessibility things because
I
I want
love
you to
it.
have that. And so I wonder, like, what would an accessible to neurodivergent people pride look like? Like, what would that
Oh,
look like?
gosh.
Like, maybe there's like sensory break stations that are
Mm-hmm.
not for hooking up or sex or anything, but it's like, quiet and dim, and like maybe wear a
Maybe we have a
blanket or
silent
whatever.
disco,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just curious,
We
like
need we
how
need
to do
sensory
that.
breaks though. Like we need spaces that are sensory friendly too. Like
Yeah,
that is a big thing. Or I don't know, like sometimes for me it's just like being around a lot of people though is overwhelming. So it's like I need to be able to get away.
yeah,
Like now that I have an RV, I take my RV everywhere. And so it's like anytime I need to get away, I instantly remove myself and take a break and then go back out. And I do so much more now. Like if
yeah.
we just had these like sensory bubbles where you could get away and like have it perfectly tailored to your sensory needs and like
Hmm.
recalibrate like a phone. You gotta go put your phone on the dock and recharge it. Okay,
Yeah,
now it's good.
exactly.
Take it off and go.
Yep.
Like that, I am the same way. I need to go plug myself in, recharge in my perfect ideal sensory bubble, and then I can go again. But like before, when we didn't have the RV, it was like, now we gotta go home. The day's over. And I
Yeah,
could do a lot less.
yeah. So maybe like a pride festival that's somewhere that everyone can bring their RVs or tents or whatever,
Oh,
and then they can
yes.
go have pride celebrations, but then go recharge by themselves and, have maybe longer hours for meals. So if people are recharging, they can still eat or whatever.
Mm-hmm,
I love it.
mm-hmm.
That's so fun.
A neurodivergent pride festival in the woods.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Let's do it. We should
With
make that
mountains
exist.
and rivers and stars and trees.
Yes. So good.
Yes, yes.
So how else can people help create emotional safety for neurodivergent and LGBTQIA people? So like neurodivergent and queer people for each other, and also maybe cis straight neurotypical people for neurodivergent queer people. Like how can we make the world cozier for people with brains like ours?
Well, the thing about creating emotional safety for anyone, regardless of their neurotype, gender identity, sexual orientation, anything, is allowing the person to come to the space and be their fullest, most authentic version of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That's any human, person to person.
Yeah.
Like as a
Right.
person, we need to be accepted for the whole person. That's our strengths, our weaknesses, our identities, whatever they are. Me, it's autistic, ADHD, non-binary, multiracial, queer, trans. Like I need all of that to be accepted. I need to be able to bring the whole person to the room. I
Mm-hmm.
need to be able to stand in my power and take up as much space as I need to take up and not make myself small for the comfort of other people, and not be told I'm too much or
Mm-hmm.
I'm not enough.
Yeah.
And so often, we're told we need to be a little more this or a little more that. Or, oh, you looked better with longer hair, or why don't you wear your makeup that way anymore? Like it's like 1,000 little paper cuts,
Yeah.
and maybe
Does.
you think it's just one comment here or there, but it's like one comment from you, one comment from the next person, one comment from my mom, one comment
Mm-hmm.
from my grandma that hurt a lot more because it was someone that meant to me. And it's all of these comments. And eventually I've got all of these invisible wounds all over me that I'm carrying around,
Mm-hmm.
instead of someone just saying, I love you, I accept you. Even if you don't understand someone's reality or what someone's going through, because neurodivergent people, our brains are literally different, so we have sensory experiences that are very different that you might not be able to comprehend. But if I'm telling you this is my experience, even if you can't understand it yourself, understand that this is my experience, it's different from your own. And
Mm-hmm.
that's okay that we have different experiences, and realize that people know their own experience and better than someone else projecting onto another person could possibly know another person's experience.
Yeah.
And so, it's like letting people have the space to be themselves, be authentic, uh, and not leave parts of them behind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I know that we're getting close to our hour
Oh,
of
wow.
time, and I want to honor your time and
Thank you.
spoons. The chat says, please pass along some love and gratitude for Lyric's openness and using their voice so understanding and compassion can grow.
Well, thank
Um,
you. Thank you.
yeah. Um, Instead of asking the three questions I like to ask at the end, which I think I asked you last time, probably, I think I'll just
Probably.
ask what else do you want people to know about these topics of being autistic, being trans, being in Texas, or what have you? And then I'd love to hear more about the work you're up to and how we can support you.
I would like for people to understand, like, autistic people, neurodivergent people, trans people, we're everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And you probably have no idea. Like we are like working in your grocery stores where, ooh, we're your friends, we're your neighbors, like your neighbors. Like we are people. Like that's the whole thing. And like so much of like when our lives are politicized, or people are trying to capitalize on our identities and our very existences, it's like so hurtful and so harmful. And they dehumanize us to do that. They
Mm-hmm.
say that we're lesser people, or we're broken people, or we're defective, or whatever. They say these horrible things about us that is like the opposite of like we're talking about, trying to create emotional safety, trying to let people show
Mm-hmm.
up, and like you're telling them you're not good enough, you're not enough. Like we just are wanting to live our lives.
Mm-hmm.
We just want, we don't want special treatment. We want access to the same things everyone else wants access to.
Yeah.
We want to live authentically. We want to live safely. We don't want to have to constantly explain and justify our experiences to everyone else. But those of us who choose to do so, I have a lot of respect for people who do so, because it's a lot of work. Like
Yeah.
being out publicly as a non-binary person, I have to constantly come out to every person I meet and choose if I want to come out or if it's worth it or not. And since
Yeah.
I'm on the internet, I have that added level of people constantly deciding that means just I'm fair game for them to throw whatever they want at.
Yeah.
And like people are nasty, and they don't need to be so nasty. I wish they wouldn't.
And sometimes we just need to walk our dog/cats.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes I just need to go jump in a lake, you know? A
Yes.
lot of times. Now that it's summer, I just always need to go jump in a lake.
You can come jump in the lake by my house anytime. Just let me know.
I know. That sounded so nice. I was like, oh, walk by a lake. I was like, that's exactly what I need.
Well, thank you so much, Lyric, for your time, your energy, your knowledge. I'm grinning. I don't know if people listening to this later can hear it, but I'm totally grinning. Um,
Same.
I love talking to you. It's like one of my favorite things. So thanks for showing up
Oh,
and spending time today.
this was fun. Thanks for inviting me back. You know, I'm
Totally.
glad. I'm glad I didn't outweigh my welcome last time. Yeah, it was good to come back. I was looking forward to this. I knew it would be fun, which is nice.
Yeah.
I'm not normally willing to do things like at the end of the day or late in the day because my brain's a little like done by then.
Yeah. Yeah. Tired, worn out. I get it.
Yeah, but I knew you wouldn't make me suffer. I don't know. I knew it'd be fun. I knew it'd be enjoyable. I knew we'd have a good
Being
time.
being haircut siblings was my favorite surprise today.
Oh, I know, right? Fab. I know you
It's
look
so fun.
good.
It's
You're
so
looking
good. Like
so good.
so
I
fresh,
love
so
it.
flat. We've got our summer gender wonderful
Summer
haircuts going
style.
on. It's so good.
Yeah. Hey.
So friends, you can connect with Lyric in a number of places. Their link tree is in the chat right now, and if you're listening to this later, it'll be in the show notes. Lyric's got a website, a consulting business, a Patreon, a store, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, PayPal, and probably more.
I'm everywhere.
Wonderful, wonderful content all over the place. You make great things, and thank you for being willing to make videos and images for the internet to enjoy, because that made your content so much more accessible to me personally and hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of other people in the world as well.
Wow. Wow.
Do you
Thank
have
you.
do you have any upcoming projects that you want to tell us about or that you're allowed to talk
My
about? I don't know, maybe the secrets.
A lot of them are secret, but no, well, some are secret. But no, I can tell you something I'm excited about that I'd love to
Yeah.
share.
Yeah, yeah.
I am a one person organization, so I go work, in my day job, when I'm not putting out free resources to the internet, which is my passion project. I say, I work with organizations trying to work on organizational culture and helping them be more accessible to neurodivergent people, but being a one person organization, like, I can only take 2 to 4 clients a month, which is not very many because every organization in the world needs to fix things because few of them, if any, are doing things correctly. So
Mm-hmm.
I've been working on this book, uh, trying to put everything I do into like almost like a box so that anyone who's neurodivergent and knows some of the basics can take these things and go implement them without me. Without me,
Yeah.
I can
That's
pull
so
myself out of
awesome.
the picture.
Yeah.
So I realized I had like kind of stopped and I picked it up earlier this month again after a little break from
Mm-hmm.
really cramming. And I only have like 6 sections left in my first draft.
That's so
It is really
exciting.
actually close to having my first draft done.
That's
So
awesome.
be on the lookout for that. I'm excited about it. It's all, thanks to the Patreon supporters because they're
Yeah.
going to be what helps me hire help to help me get it published because I'm going to self-publish, but I've got to get an editor, a copy editor, and someone help me get the Kindle Direct publishing set
Yeah.
up and stuff. And so,
I
yeah, it's
might
going to
I
be
might
exciting.
know
But
some cool trans copy editors if you want me to try to hook you up
okay,
with somebody.
give me some. I'm looking. I do want to get like trans or autistic,
Yeah.
people involved. I've got a couple names, but I haven't locked anyone in yet. So like
Yeah.
the more names, the better, because
Yeah.
I want to have the variety. But that's good too. The more names. So give me some options if you got them. Send me an email.
I love it. I
Especially
love
that
it.
Kindle thing, because that's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know how to format it correctly for Kindle Direct Publishing, and I could teach
Mm-hmm.
myself if nobody knew how to do it. I was going to teach myself that piece and just hire a regular copy editor. But
Right.
if somebody has that skill specifically, and a lot of them didn't, that's the goodie. But I did talk to one who did. So there's one potential I know that does, but it's not the nail in the coffin if they can't. That's just a preference.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll send a message to my two pals that
Woohoo!
do stuff like this and see if they have those qualities. Um, they are both trans and neurospicy, so
They're spicy. Yum.
if they can also do the Kindle thing, then there you go, trifecta of joy.
Good.
So
Awesome.
cool.
Throw me some more names in the hat. That's great.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Lyric, for being here today. Just as a note to the audience, really briefly. So next Monday, we're gonna skip having the show be live, because I will be going camping with my kids because it's a long weekend, and I want to take time off after moving and all the chaos that it has been the last 2 or 3 months of buying a house and moving and all of that. But in 2 weeks, we're going to kick off our Pride Month series here on the Genderful talk show. Our first guest for Pride Month is Spencer Bergstead, who JD. I think that's a. Yeah, you have to go to school to get those letters, and I don't know what they mean, but Spencer, I think, is a retired lawyer and an activist, currently a trans man. And we're going to be talking about legal issues facing trans folks. We have some other very exciting guests lined up for the rest of Pride Month. Andy Rajani is going to come on and talk about illustrating gender wonderful children's books. The second week of June, the third week of June, we will have Atlas O. Phoenix coming on to talk about human being human. Atlas is also, I think, in the middle of creating a film. I can't remember the name of the film, but it is a very trans BIPOC film. And then on the 27th of June, so the last Monday in June, we'll be having Kai and Jackal from the SDP podcast come on and talk about trans eldership and what it's like being trans elders and transitioning before the year 2000. And so I'm very excited for this lineup of guests we have next month. I've been preparing for this for months and months, and now it's finally almost Pride Month, so please do come back for those shows. In the meantime, Genderful would like to thank our guests for being on this podcast. Please feel free to join us live on Twitch on Mondays, check out the replays on YouTube on Fridays, and keep an eye on your favorite podcasting platforms for edited audio-only versions. As Nefertiti likes to say, trans rights are human rights. That's right.